Hello there. Did I just see you guys somewhere? Seems like I did. Hey, if you guys happen to go back and listen, I just added that raffle link to the description box on today's broadcast, and it'll be on everyone from today forward until it's over. So the link is there. Um, I'm going to begin reading here now. Good morning, Kathy. Good to see you here. Glad you're here. This is called Chapter 2, called Divine Appointments. This is Chapter 2 of Now I See by Clay Clark's wife, Vanessa Clark. Here we go. Fast forwarding through my life, hitting on the points that would ultimately piece themselves together into the culmination of my future son's healing, I arrived as a 12-year-old from Southern California in the city of Louisville, Kentucky. My family landed here after a couple of recent moves within our home state of California. What had appeared to be a lavish financial existence had ended with the bank taking back our home, and many other family belongings were repossessed. Unknown to me, we had never actually owned them. It was the summer before my 8th grade year when, due to my dad's employer's California location being shut down, he was transferred to another location instead of being let go. We arrived in our new hometown. We were moving for the first time from a home into an apartment. It was quite an adjustment. Up until this point, all I had ever known was living in homes that were fashionably furnished, playing in well-kept yards with well-known neighborhood kids. My mom had stayed at home to care for my brother and me, and occasionally took on the job of looking after neighbor children as well, or helping out with our school to help make ends meet. I had taken all that for granted. I hadn't known any different. Now I did. In our new home, there was no furniture. My brother and I still had our bedroom pieces, and my parents had a bed, etc., but our couches and coffee table, all of our family furniture, had been repossessed before we left California. A truck came one day and took the downstairs furniture out of our house. No one said much about it. The family living area of our apartment now sat largely empty. There was no yard, no one we knew to play with, and a lot of newness all around me. There were basketball and tennis courts at the apartment complex, neither of which I had played before. Other than that, there was a small grassy area in front of our apartment building, and just down the road, a neighborhood with houses not unlike the ones I had once occupied. I now yearned for a home like those. I had never been to a place like Louisville. Lush trees lined the winding roads on the rolling hills, so thick that in places they seemed to bend themselves over the road until the foliage met above in a canopy-type fashion. The houses were all made of brick, and they had basements. This in itself was a novelty. I had never seen a brick house in person before, and I certainly had never been in a basement. In California, the homes were stucco with Mexican tile roofs. Things were different. The move was hard on my brother and me. Since we didn't know anyone and the school year was yet to start, we spent our summer days together. We attempted to play tennis on the apartment complex's court. My brother, the supreme athlete, who had played on a tennis team before, quickly became frustrated with me. I had never played the sport at all, trying as hard as I could to hit the ball. The majority of my swings cut through the air full power, only to somehow result in me turning the racket last minute from leading with the wide target area designed to hit the ball, to the narrow rim outline of the racket slicing through the air and completely missing the ball. After numerous attempts, I would finally make contact between the racket and ball, only to hit the ball out of the entire court. Now, I've done that. After repeated, increasingly passionate instruction from my brother on how to simply make the racket and ball gracefully connect and travel over the net within the confines of the court, my brother was infuriated with me. His 6th grade temper got the best of him. "You're doing it on purpose. Just hit the ball inside the court," he yelled. "I'm trying. I think I'm just too powerful." I think after one day, we decided to move on from tennis. It was no fun when only one person was hitting the ball. Thankful to get out of the suffocating humidity we were now experiencing any time we went outside, we decided to spend our time inside. We came up with a game of throwing a small rubber ball against the wall in our sparsely furnished apartment. When we grew tired of this, we would venture out into the heat, taking walks to the area pet shop to look in on the kittens and other pets. We loved this pet shop. Previous to our move, we had owned many different cats over the years, but we hadn't been able to take our cat with us to our apartment. The pet shop never got old. We would see all the new kittens brought in and then see them grow from week to week and slowly be adopted out. We knew we couldn't have a cat at our apartment, so we started hoping for one of the many other pets we saw there: gerbils, mice, rats, etc. As an adult, I now see why my parents didn't agree to get us one of these animals. Soon we anticipated starting school in our new city where we could meet other kids. Weeks before school started, my mom went to inquire about the sports and activities my brother and I would have a chance to participate in. It was here that my mom found out about the middle school's cheerleading team and their tryouts that would start shortly after school started. It was recommended to her that in preparation for tryouts, I attend tumbling classes at an area cheerleading gym called Gym Time. My mom located the gym and enrolled me in classes. I loved them. School soon started, more newness. My eyes were now open to the existence of a world other than the one I had previously known. All the schools I had ever attended consisted of an outdoor campus. Schools here were different as the entire school was under one roof due to winter weather. I had never imagined such a thing. The kids were very different as well. I was decked out in the California fashion that had been popular back home, brands like Quicksilver and other surfwear. Not only was I new to town, but my clothing advertised it. Kids at my new school had LL Bean backpacks and wore shirts that said, "Climb every mountain." The girls whom I had classes with were primarily soccer players. I had only played soccer 1 year in my life as a kindergartner, and I had never played since because I hated it. I never adjusted to the new group of kids, and from here on out, my family never again had the finances to be on the up and up with any area fashion trends. This was a little hard to take, moving into a time in childhood where this becomes an especially important factor in determining one's social status at school. My mom had done her research, and we were enrolled in the wealthiest and most affluent school district in Louisville, so we would have the best schooling and best teachers, but we didn't have the money, clothes, or home that was up to par with our new peers. In Louisville, middle school included the grades 6 through 8. By the 8th grade, the year we moved to Louisville, most students at the middle school had already formed their cliques and groups of friends. Because I was not one to easily meet new people or even talk to someone who did not initiate a conversation with me, I failed to form a bond with anybody. After an unfulfilling year at my middle school, I decided that instead of attending the local high school, applying to the area's magnet high school, DuPont Manual, wouldn't be a bad idea. The high school manual was combined with one of the nation's youth performing arts schools known as YPAS. YPAS specialized in training students in a specific performing art: dance, theater, musical theater, vocal music, instrumental music, design and production, or piano. My mom had recommended that I apply to YPAS and audition for the theater or dance department. Joining a new group of kids and pursuing new opportunities seemed like a good idea at this point to me. With very little experience and even less known self-interest in the art, I decided to apply for the theater department. If accepted to YPAS, I would take my academic classes at DuPont Manual and walk a short distance later in the day to the YPAS building to take acting and theater classes. After getting accepted to YPAS, I again was about to enter another school where I would not know anybody. I didn't think there was one person from my current middle school who would be attending my new high school with me. I continued attending the local cheer gym, where not only was I working on my tumbling skills, but I was meeting girls who had the same interests as me. The cheer gym was located across town in a warehouse type environment. I would soon learn that Louisville, Kentucky is the cheerleading capital of the world, and the owner of the gym I was attending was the head honcho of all things cheer. He was still revolutionizing the sport. Under his direction, I excelled at tumbling and learning new skills like stunting and basket tosses. I soon discovered that this head honcho, James Speed, the owner of the gym, was also the coach of the magnet school I would soon be attending. After learning this, with his encouragement, I decided I would try out to cheer for my new high school. The cheerleading program at DuPont Manual was one of the most successful in the country, so I was ecstatic when I, along with several other freshmen, made the varsity team. There were 4 of us in particular who were quickly designated best friends. I say we were best friends, but really it was by default. 2 of the best friends really were that. They had grown up through elementary and middle school together and had been close for a long time. These 2 best friends explained to us, I and the other girl, that we had to be best friends due to the fact that we were left over. They always said it jokingly, but we also knew it was true. Nonetheless, my friend and I shared a true bond and great friendship that grew for a good year. We would practice our cheerleading skills at one another's homes, goof off in biology, and spend time with the other half of our foursome. However, as time progressed, it was apparent that the culture that existed between the 4 of us is what I would describe as the mean girl crowd. No, nothing horrible ever happened to me hanging out with these girls, and in fact, to this day, I have a genuine affection for each of them. It is just that I should have never been a part of the social circle. These were not the type of girls I would be naturally drawn to, or them to me. Left to our own devices, I was noticeably unconfident, unsure of myself, quiet, and innocent. I remember my drama teacher constantly writing me to stop apologizing for myself. He said by my actions I was continually telling people, sorry. He was right. I never wanted to be noticed, never cause a problem, and never draw attention to myself. I quickly realized that I hated acting. My new friends were the exact opposite. They were outwardly confident, outgoing, aggressive, and at times abrasive. I didn't know how to react to the hurtful interaction that was commonplace among the girls. In the past, while growing up in California, I had always fit in with friends who were smart, funny, and cute, and who had been raised with the same morals and often religious views as me. Remember, my previous best friend had been from a strong Mormon family, and I had been pretty sheltered in my interaction with my peers. This was my first experience with the it girls, or the lead social crowd, and somehow I was in it, even if by default. However, my current situation was complicated by the fact that my friendships and the crowd I was now a part of had nothing to do with shared values. Our friendship was predicated solely on the fact that we cheered varsity together, and thus we were now designated into a particular social group. I loved cheering. It was my thing. The gym was my place. It was a great time for me. James demanded more from me than anyone ever had, yet he also let me know that he cared about us as people. On the flip side, the more I learned about the new girls I cheered with, the more out of place I felt when I was with them outside of the gym. After our first squad sleepover, I was scared. I felt guilty and nervous around the girls. After revelations from the slumber party, I thought, oh no, these are bad girls. Adding to that fact was that our team was so close. We practiced together and hung out together. I would say that this is a pretty typical of most successful teams. Our bond was great. What was not typical, didn't know this until years later, is that because our coach rewarded members by skill and not seniority, our varsity squad had freshmen like myself right out of the 8th grade who had never kissed a boy, never drank alcohol, never smoked or experimented with any drugs, suddenly forced into the social circle of juniors and seniors who regularly had sex, smoked pot, and did things I had never even heard of. They expected to see the new freshman girls initiated into the same scene. My group of 4 best friends seemed more than anxious and willing for all the new experiences to come, but I was scared. You may be wondering how my family move as a middle schooler or my association with my new group of friends has anything to do with the future healing of my son. You must remember that God knows the end from the beginning. Even though he was far from my thoughts at this point in my life, he had not forgotten me. Without my knowledge, he led and guided me right where I was at, using who I was with. God was faithful to me. The 4 of us, best friends, cheered together our freshman and sophomore years, but by my junior year, we had grown apart and went in different directions. Only 2 of us were on the same squad at this point, and we weren't much more than acquaintances. Cheerleading was such a dominant sport at our school that there were two different varsity cheerleading squads. The red squad was more competitive, while the white squad was not as intense. As my former best friends and I had gone our separate ways socially and became more distanced, two hard workers were promoted from the white team to the red team my junior year. This was the point where I really found friends of my own, friends who were not only on the same squad as me, but with whom I also shared some life values. One of these girls was Julie Dunn. When I met Julie, she was a hardworking, super petite, Kate Moss-esque, blonde-haired beauty. Julie didn't make the red varsity squad until her sophomore year, my junior year. She was 1 year younger than me. As a freshman, she had entered the cheer program literally around 75 pounds, about 5'1", and was extremely awkward. Like me, she was quiet and innocent. During that first year, she and her friend Lindsay, a quiet and reserved, sweet brunette, worked tirelessly to conquer the skills needed to make the red competitive squad for their sophomore year. When both Julie and Lindsay made the squad, we were almost instantly friends. Both girls were goal-oriented and extremely hardworking. We spent a lot of time together perfecting our stunting skills, and the task at hand brought us even closer. Julie and I were especially determined to be the best at our particular positions. Both Julie and Lindsay were very sweet and believed in God and allowed Him to have a role in their lives. This is not to say that we remained angels throughout high school or escaped uncorrupted by any means. Simply put, I believe we were initially drawn to each other because we recognized our common values and beliefs in addition to our love of cheer. By the time we were nearing the completion of high school, we had defiantly evolved from the innocent girls we initially were, but we still held the truth in our hearts. It was through the open door of this friendship, the summer before my senior year in high school, that divine appointments had been lined up in my life. Lindsay invited me to go on a spiritual Christian retreat called Chrysalis, which made an impact on her life and mine. Looking back, I'm a little surprised that she invited me and that I attended. She was closer to Julie than me, yet I was the one she invited. Also, I didn't know anyone on the retreat. I wasn't a part of any church, and I didn't know anyone putting the retreat on, but I went anyway, and it did something to me. After a fun-filled extended weekend full of study, worship, bonding activities, and prayer, we came to the last day of Chrysalis. Following an intense worship session, we headed back to our designated rooms in mandated silence for a time to reflect. Upon entering my room, I saw a paper bag festively decorated on one side with the words, Chrysalis 21, and Here I Am, Lord, on the other. The bag was lying on my bed. It was filled to the brim. It was a most unexpected gift. Dumping out the contents of the bag, I discovered dozens of handwritten letters from friends, family, and people whose lives I had impacted. They had taken the time to write what my life meant to them, that I was loved, special, and that they had been praying specifically for me throughout this weekend. These letters made a huge impact on me. I had always known that I was loved, but it was still an overwhelming experience to be bombarded with an expression of love so intimately by so many at the same time. I didn't even know how these letters had arrived. Obviously, someone had spent a great deal of time organizing the whole thing. There were letters from family members who lived on the other side of the country that I had not seen in years, from teachers, friends, and camp counselors. I was crying as I read them, realizing how loved and cared about I was. To this day, I still have that bag filled with those letters. Looking back, Chrysalis was an event that made a major impact on my life, allowing God to direct my path. What a good and faithful God. I don't recall asking for direction, yet now I could see how He was providing it. I had come to that all-important time in my life, choosing college. I always knew I would go to college. School always became reasonably easy to me, and I had great aspirations of a successful career. At this point, I had decided that I wanted to pursue a career in broadcast journalism. It seemed almost everyone from our high school would be attending the University of Kentucky. I didn't want to go to a school where everyone I knew was though. I had never really fit in with everyone from high school. Because the University of Kentucky did not offer a degree in my major, it was ruled out. I knew I wanted to go away to school, but I still had no idea where. About the time I began to really ponder my options, my Uncle Michael, about 5 years older than me, arranged to drive me cross country for some purpose that to this day I cannot remember. Michael is the youngest of my mom's 7 siblings and the only boy. He is tall and slender with blue-green eyes, blonde hair, and a sincere, thoughtful demeanor. Michael had always attended private Christian schools and excelled not only in his schooling, but he was also upheld for his high moral integrity. He had great expectations and aspirations for his life that we all knew he would achieve. I respected my uncle. I am almost positive that my grandma Alice had been one of the masterminds who had arranged for Michael to drive with me and speak with me. But anyway, Uncle Michael took this trip as an opportunity to seriously speak into my life. The chaos of my parents' relationship was no secret to my relatives, and I am glad that Michael took it upon himself to provide direction in my life when I really needed it. Michael told me about how I was entering into a time in my life where the decisions I made now and throughout the next 10 years would affect the entire course of my life. He was right. It was an eye-opening discussion. He explained that where I went to college would probably help determine who I would marry, as most people would meet their future spouse at college, and it would even influence the career I would enter into and where I would live. This one decision would shape much of my future. By the end of our conversation, well, this is a long chapter. I might stop right. Okay, never mind. I was fully convinced by all the points that he brought up that this decision was one I needed to take very seriously. Michael's mother, my grandma Alice, had been encouraging me to check out a Christian school in the state called Asbury. Wow, Asbury School, no kidding. I never looked into the school. From the pamphlets and materials my grandma sent me, it seemed small and wasn't appealing to me. However, on the heels of my conversation with Michael, my Aunt Karen and Uncle Clint, whom I had the utmost respect and admiration for based on the solidity of their marriage and family, made a point to talk to me about attending Oral Roberts University, a Christian university that they themselves had attended. Unknown to me at that time, Oral Roberts was an actual person, a man who had a thriving healing ministry that began around the 1950s. His ministry functioned through revivals and tent crusades. Mr. Roberts later went on to found the university. He was called by God to raise up a generation of students to hear my voice, to go where my light is dim, where my voice is heard small and my healing power is not known, even to the uttermost bounds of the earth. Their work will exceed yours, and in this I am well pleased. The focus of the university was to educate the whole person, spirit, mind, and body. I had never heard of the school, nor did I know that several of my aunts and uncles had also attended the college, but the fact that my Aunt Karen and Uncle Clint were alumni and endorsed the school made a huge impact on me. Karen and Clint had what I would describe as the model family. They had met each other while attending ORU and had created a Christ-centered family that consisted of 3 boys and a girl. Their standards for their family were high, and I loved that. Their faith was tried and true. I had known that their firstborn son had faced life-threatening medical difficulties. Relying on God through their trials and tribulations, they had grown in their walk with the Lord as a result of it, and their son and family are thriving today. They were real, and they lived their Christianity out more than any family I had ever been exposed to. After talking with them, I was convinced to go ahead and schedule a visit to ORU during college weekend. If I decided I didn't like it, I just simply wouldn't go. Plus, the university offered my major. What more could I want? So I boarded a plane and flew from Louisville, Kentucky to Tulsa, Oklahoma. My Uncle Clint's parents, whom I had never met, Kay and Charles Taylor, had arranged to pick me up from the airport. They helped me get my bags and loaded them into the car. Although this was my first time meeting Kay and Charles, I immediately loved them. Kay looked to be in her 50s, and her natural beauty was enhanced by the joy she radiated. Charles was a similar age, tall, slender in build, and warm but reserved. They carried themselves with an air of confidence, and I knew that they must be highly esteemed within their community. During the ride to their home from the airport, the Taylors told me about how both of their kids had attended ORU, and how they had eventually followed their children from their hometown in Texas to Oklahoma. Before we arrived at their home, Charles made a quick detour and drove by the campus to show me the dorms and where I would be dropped off in the morning. I was shocked as they showed me what I was told were famed praying hands on the campus. The sculptures made in the shape of two hands raised together in prayer were a sight to see. Standing 60 feet tall and weighing 30 tons, they were made of bronze and surrounded by flags representing the various countries of the university's diverse student population. I could also see the university's prayer tower from afar. The top of it was lit by a natural gas-fed flame that burns continuously, reminding us that there are always people praying. I had never known that any of this had even existed. What was this place? Clearly, this was not a typical college. We pulled away from the campus and continued on toward the Taylor's home. I was informed that if I ever needed anything, they would be right there. They lived only about 15 minutes from the campus. As we approached their home, we entered into a gated community. Right away, my attention was turned toward the awe-inspiring surroundings. Beautiful brick and stone homes with lush green rolling hills lining the streets. The homes were set back behind large trees. They came in a variety, strong and sturdy or gracefully, artfully swooping. I was mesmerized by the neighborhood. Wow, this is where they lived? As we pulled in the drive, Charles informed me, "You know our daughter Charla lives next door. You will have to meet her sometime." By the time we arrived, it was late. As I entered through the garage and into the kitchen, I took in the beauty of their home and its decor. The home had worn wood floors that had been painted in a large black and white check pattern. The open kitchen was painted in warm yellow tones. It felt eclectic in its decor, artistic and upscale. I remember examining my room upon my entrance and being amazed that there was actual fabric on the walls. Not wallpaper, but fabric. I decided right then and there at some point I would like to have a room with fabric on the walls. This has yet to happen in my life, but I have now been reminded. Also, chocolates filled the decorative glass container on the desk in my room, another detail that girls are quick to take note of. I quickly got ready for bed, just as excited about the next day as I was about this room. The next morning, I awoke early and loaded my luggage into the car with Charles. He drove me to the campus and dropped me off where the weekenders signed in. Now that I was seeing the campus in the daylight, I was struck at how different it was. Hues of gold and blue adorned the majority of the campus. It was modern in a retro 70s sort of way, but what really stood out to me about the university then and still today is the people. Up until this point in my life, other than with my best friends in elementary school that I had moved away from, I had never felt the kind of acceptance from my peers that I felt during that weekend. After checking in for the weekend, we were put in groups. We stayed in the dorms and rooms with current students we had never met before on the same floor as other weekenders in our group. Everyone was loving and welcoming. Students attending the university were not just from the surrounding area, groups of friends that had known each other throughout the high school like you would expect to find at many state universities. At ORU, the majority of the student body was made up of individuals who had traveled across the country to attend a school where they could learn while at the same time be surrounded by teachers and other students who were all trying to submit to God's will in their lives. It was truly an amazing experience that built upon what was introduced to me during the Chrysalis weekend in high school. God was continuing to silently guide me on a specific path in a seemingly self-directed life. One thing that amazed me about the students I met during my visit was how normal they were. They were not geeky or socially awkward like I might have imagined before attending the weekend. They were normal high school kids that really surprised me. I was put in an orientation group with a high school homecoming queen and an overly flirtatious brunette, among others. There were as many different personalities represented throughout that weekend that are present in any school setting. The only thing unique about all the students was the fact that we all passionately shared the same core beliefs. We all had the same foundational truth to build on. We believed in Jesus as Lord and Savior. That was our common denominator. We attended a school-wide chapel service, just like we would be required to attend biweekly upon enrolling in the university. The praise and worship were amazing. I was blown away. All of these kids were singing their hearts out and seeking God. As this went on, one of the girls who was a host during the weekend quietly pulled me aside and said, "God wants me to tell you that he loves you." I didn't know what to say to her. I had never experienced anything like that before, with God saying something personal to me. I just lost it. Then and there in the chapel service, I began bawling. The God of the universe said that to me. He loves me. It was too much. But it was just what I needed, and he knew it. Later, I wanted to find the girl and quiz her. Did you hear his voice? How did you know it was God? What did he say exactly? From that weekend on, it was decided that I would be going to ORU, and I was so excited to get there. End of chapter 2. Tomorrow, chapter 3, called Another World. And we'll be back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, Godcast, and then a reading of chapter 3 of Now I See. Everybody, have a great day. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.